Uh, Hi. Down?
Down is your.
Hi, I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Uh, have you ever had those thoughts where you're not quite good enough? Uh, how about I'm not worthy to be considered a child of God? Um, Here come the cheers. Maybe you've doubted your ability to do something you've done many, many times before. And just one time when the pressure's on, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't do that. Uh, Here I am. I know I have. I'm doing it right now. Because I almost didn't do this. I had a difficulty writing this message this time around. I've done this once before. The last time it was cake. I kind of like cake. Uh, but this time was different. Let me explain. Uh, as Joe kind of mentioned, we kind of got together. And the second runner-ups, or I guess they're not runner-ups, are we?
Round two.
We're not even minor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Minor pastors.
You're
Um,
important in God's eyes.
Absolutely, absolutely. We went through and learned the process of how a message goes together, and we had a couple classes with Dave, uh, and just going through a formatting process, and I enjoyed it. It was very informative on just how a whole message goes together. Uh, but well, let me explain. See, we actually had three different options we drew from a hat, which apparently I believe Ben was the brilliant one that came up. Let's do a hat. Uh, and out of all of them, you could choose a Bible verse or several verses, a biblical character, or you could go with a theme. I was the only one that actually went with a theme. I thought it was kind of unique. I was like, "Ooh, good challenge." So I sat down and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be easy." I'll sit down and just punch in. Wait for it. We drew from a hat, remember? and and I simply went through and I punched it into the computer, into a search engine, and it was Unity. It's like it's a great. Punch it into a search engine for a Bible app, and it comes up with, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. It's great. That's just from Ephesians. Paul talks about that. Okay? Now go off and live in unity. Simple, huh? But it's not quite what I had when I got stuck there. That's all I had. That's the rest of my message was. A blank screen. But this, like as I said before, this time is different than last time. As back in September, well, November, so it's still even affecting me now. The day before Thanksgiving, I was at work, and I almost passed out. I had a pain in my head, lasted about 10 seconds. Uh, I went. I don't know what it was. I just felt funny afterwards, and needless to say, my Thanksgiving I spent in the hospital. I just had a stroke. Fortunately, it didn't affect anything because it only killed half of my brain, so the other half I don't use anyway. It's half I don't use, apparently, or something. But there's, I saw God moving through it the entire time I was there. 3 days in the hospital. One of the times when I saw God moving was the boss, my boss. He's a former paramedic. After I had this moment, I went to him and said something's wrong. And he checked me over. He's like, "Here, eat some pizza. You haven't eaten." He's like, "You live on Red Bull and cigarettes. Stop." And gave me some pizza. Got some fruit in me, and got my blood sugar up. Checked my blood sugar. He said, "Oh, that was fine." And then he said, "Okay, close your eyes and hold your arms up." And of course, I was like this, and I still am somewhat. And so he gave me two choices: either we call an ambulance and I go to the hospital, or he takes me. And by then, as a blubbering mess, which by the end of this message I probably will be. Oh, there's people over there too. Um, that was one of the blessings I saw in that day, because It could have happened 2 hours later when I was on my way home. It could have happened while I was at home. But he was there, and he said, okay, let's go. Another blessing that happened was my dad. Here come the tears. My dad lives in Florida. I haven't seen him in 3 years. He just happened to be in town, and we had arrangements to meet the day after Thanksgiving. We were gonna hang out with family, and you think that was a coincidence? He happened to be in town. I haven't seen him in 3 years. I think not. You see, my father's one of the pillars of my faith. He prays for my kids, my wife, me, my entire family, my sisters, their families, on a regular basis, and he's always reading the Bible. He came in to visit me at the hospital that Thanksgiving Day, and about maybe 4 or 5 weeks later, he confided with me on the phone that he heard a small voice whisper something to him as he was walking into my hospital room. But I'll let you know what that voice said at the end. According to some experts, oops, too fast. Go back. Okay. According to some experts, I should be in a bed learning how to eat, how to speak, and how to walk again, because the stroke took basically 90% of the left side of my brain. I made it lucky. I have a small blind spot in my vision that the neurologist says won't come back. I still have numbness on my right side, which is very strange because I can still feel my skin. I was happy. I was going to go get a tattoo because I couldn't feel my arm. But then a couple hours later, I was like, darn it, I can feel it again. But there's muscles I can't feel. Every so often you'll see me limping. It's because there's muscles in my legs that I just can't feel. But I thought that was all that happened, just those two things. But as I sat down to write this, that's when I realized there's more going on in here than I thought. When I was working on breaking down unity for this message, God was using this message to break me down. Turn the page. It's double-sided. I don't like double-sided. Unity like this, it's nearly impossible to get nowadays. It's until you get the unity within yourself. The unity with your own weakness. Unity of finding peace from your past. The unity you get from falling at the feet of Christ and just saying, I need you. That's the type of unity that everybody needs to go through before this kind of unity can be achieved. Paul spoke of a thorn in his side. I was given a thorn in my flesh, a message from Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I'm not perfect, but I see this. I haven't prayed for him to take this. I've actually thanked him for it, because now I know, even through this weakness, I can see Christ. Christ was there the entire time. And that small voice my dad heard when he walked into my emergency room, watch what I can do. Thank you.
All right. Well, as Steve was saying, we had Member Preach 1 and Member Preach 2. I was a part of that Member Preach 2 group. And you might question, hey, she's never been up here on a Sunday before. And you'd be right. But I have spoken at women's retreats and the women's luncheon. So Joe said that I qualified to skip ahead and be a part of the 2 group. So, woohoo! The messages I've given before have been about 20 minutes long, so I know I can speak. The stretch for me is going to be to maybe not talk so much. So I have about 10 minutes. And that's what I'm going to work on. And I'm going to share with you today about Daniel, because that's the slip I drew out of the hat. So when I think of Daniel, I think of faith. Do you know somebody who has a lot of faith? Do you have faith? I have faith. I took a test and it told me so. The test I took was from a spiritual gifts class. Maybe you should take a test and see what it says. Coincidentally, we're going to have a spiritual gifts class this fall. I'm just saying. So stay tuned and we'll keep you posted on that. But for now, I want to share with you a couple of moments about Daniel's faith. The book of Daniel opens up with Daniel and his friends being taken from their home after the king of Babylon defeated Jerusalem. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted handsome, young, smart men that could be trained up to serve in the king's palace. Daniel and his friends were about 15. Imagine being pulled away from all that you know. How do you live through that? How do you thrive? How did Daniel and his friends? Their faith shone when they requested to eat only vegetables and water instead of unclean food and wine that was served from the king's table. God blessed their obedience, and they did thrive. We've all been in difficult or unplanned situations, not certain of how to get through, but God does. Faith is what helps us believe that God's got the situation under control, even when we don't feel it or see it. There's so much to Daniel, I couldn't possibly share it all today. I hope that you hear at least one thing that maybe you didn't know before. Throughout the whole book of Daniel, Daniel knew God was with him. Daniel was in prayer often, multiple times a day, in fact. He had dreams, visions, and prophecies about the Jews and of Jesus. He even met the angel Gabriel. Daniel was a foreign captive in Babylon for about 70 years, served under 4 pagan kings, and even though it wasn't his choice, he sure did make the best of the situation. Or should I say, his faith allowed God to mold him through the situations. There's some amazing stuff in Daniel. I would encourage you to read it yourself. A story that I know you all know is Daniel in the lion's den. Quick background. At this point, Daniel's about 80 years old, and the king was King Darius, who liked Daniel. However, some of the other officials wanted to take Daniel out of the picture, but could find no corruption in him. Instead, they convinced King Darius to write a decree that said, for the next 30 days, no one is to pray to any god or mortal except to King Darius. Anyone who disobeys will be thrown in the lion's den. So remember, I said Daniel prayed a lot. Well, as much as King Darius didn't want to, because of the decree, he had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. And now, imagine spending an entire night on the floor of a den of lions. Did Daniel sleep peacefully, like some pictures portray? Or did he pray and praise God throughout the night as lions stalked and growled around him? We don't know. Daniel's faith was evident, though. We don't always see the results of our faith. However, here with the lions, Daniel did. He declared to the king as the night was over, "My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of lions." Have you had moments when you saw or felt your faith in action? For me, there's 2 distinct moments when I felt the peace of God so strongly, even though the situation was so uncertain. The first one was when my middle son, Gabe, who's now 21, was 10, and he spent about a week in the hospital with bacterial meningitis. He had a high fever and was mostly deaf for days. He could have died. And I couldn't do anything about it. At the time, I was just going through the motions, but there was an underlying peace. I did not worry about his recovery or his health. I knew that the hospital staff, and more importantly, God was handling it. The second, more importantly, was Steve's stroke. My faith that God's got this carried me through. It's not always easy. There's ups and downs, but just to remember that God's got it is what carried me through and still does to this day. And it makes me wonder if that's how Daniel felt. In every situation that we read about Daniel, his faith never faltered. I'm pretty sure there was no paper and pencil test back then that he took. But really, if you think about it, that's not needed, because we're tested daily in this world. Think back to your last test, your last struggle or heartache. Did you have faith like Daniel? Faith that helps you know that God had it under his control, no matter what it seemed like at the time. Maybe yes, maybe no. Because just as I stand and share my positive faith moments, I've also had moments when my faith was lost. We all do. Because we're living in a fallen world and we're human. The moments where my faith was lost looks like me taking control of the situation, me choosing the path that's best for me. Those times when I didn't include God in it. The times when I say, I got this. Those have led me to dark times, and I need to remember to include God in all of my moments. We need God's help daily. We need to believe that God's in it, especially when we don't see it or feel it. That, my friends, is faith. One more story out of the book of Daniel I want to share is the fiery furnace. Now wait, before you say, that wasn't Daniel. I know. It was Daniel's friends. Remember those 15-year-olds that were taken in the beginning? That was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So quick background here is King Nebuchadnezzar had built an image of gold and commanded all to worship it, or else be thrown into the blazing furnace. What gave Daniel's friends the strength to stand? Literally stand and not bow down when required? We know they had faith. This story shows us they had faith so strong they were willing to die instead of bow down to a false god. As they said, if this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from a fiery, burning furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And with that, they were thrown into a fiery furnace so hot that it burned and killed the soldiers who threw them in. But not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were saved because God sent down someone to protect them. Maybe it was an angel, maybe it was Jesus, we don't know. We do know that there was a fourth person in the furnace saving them by the hand of God, no matter how you look at it. And they didn't even smell of smoke when they walked out of the furnace. What fiery furnace of struggle are you standing in? Can you see or feel Jesus with you? Do you believe that God's got this, whatever this is for you? I can stand up here with complete confidence and say that whether you feel it or not, right now, God's got it. God's got you. He loves you. Thank you.